I recently started my own firm about 15 months ago and have gotten accustomed, thankfully, to people calling and asking me to take the case. And one of the things that I've heard that has surprised me the most is that people will call and they'll tell me, a plaintiff's lawyer, all I do is sue people, they'll tell me, I'm not the kind of person who just sues folks. And I thought about that for a while after the second or third time I heard it. And it occurs to me that what has happened is that we have come far enough as a society that there is a stigma associated with vindicating your rights. The reason we've gotten there is that insurers and corporate defendants, the rich and the powerful who seek to impose their will on the rest of our society, have been able to convince us that seeking to redress your rights is an exercise in greed. Well, they're wrong. That's not the truth. And the jury system is a lot more than that. The jury system, as Mr. Nader and others have said, is a great protector of the rights of all of us. To illustrate that, I want to tell a story. This is the first case I ever tried. I was in law school. I was a third-year law student, and I was working with the public defender's office representing folks who couldn't afford lawyers. And I had a client who was accused of driving under the influence. He was an old black man in Athens, Georgia, who had gotten in a car crash with a rich white girl. And when the police showed up, my client had some beer on his breath, so they booked him for DUI, took him down to the station, arrested him. And I took the case. I didn't think that there was sufficient evidence to prove that he was drinking over the legal limit. So that was my argument. I argued my heart out. We had a great time, had a great trial, fought hard, sat down, and then we entered that phase of the trial where the judge reads the law to the jury. That's about as boring as it's possible to be. I mean, you got a judge up there with his charge. It's like 5 pages, single-spaced, legal technicalities, and he reads it with an inflection about it like this, and he goes on and on and on and on. I mean, I love the law. I was emotionally invested in this case, and I was bored. So as I sat there in the courtroom, I was sure the jury wasn't paying attention. So they take the case after that, and they go back, and they start deliberating back in the jury room, and I start pacing the halls. I mean, I was nervous as I could be. I'm on the phone with my father, Jeb Butler, who's a trial lawyer, ask him, how long is this going to take? He'll ask me and says, I don't know. So I keep walking, and I'm so worried that my client is going to be the victim of jurors who cave to prejudice or jurors who disregard the law. After about 3 hours, the bailiff comes out in the hall and he says, stand against Bradford, y'all come back in. So I come running back into the courtroom because that's my case, and I'm there at rapt attention, standing like this as the jury files in, and it turns out they don't have a verdict yet. All they got is a question. So, I'm real let down. And what the jury wanted to know is that they had picked out one little legal technicality in the middle of that 45-minute judge-jury charge that bored me to tears. And they wanted the judge to tell them what legal rebuttable inference they were to draw if the blood alcohol concentration of the defendant was between 0.04 and 0.08. And they were right. That was it. I mean, that was the point of law upon which the whole case turned. I mean, the jury paid better attention to the charge than I did. And I went back, they asked the question, deliberated some more, returned a not guilty verdict. My client was ecstatic. But that is when I learned how much juries care and how hard juries will work to get it right. When it comes to faith in the jury system, I became a believer that day. That moment when they asked that question. So, if the question is, what do we need to do to restore faith in the jury system so that people don't call me anymore and have to say, I'm not the kind of person who would normally sue folks? It is to counteract the misinformation that has been perpetrated upon the American people by insurers and corporate interests who seek to stifle the jury system and to end it. The truth is that most of the folks doing that call themselves conservatives, but the jury system is fundamentally a conservative system. that they ought to like. I mean, if you believe in small government, and we'll do 5 points. Number 1 is small government. You ought to like the jury system because there ain't no government involved at all. It's 12 private citizens deciding a dispute. If you like accountability, another conservative principle, you ought to like the jury system because that's what juries are all about. Is hearing what happened in this dispute between two people and figuring out who to hold accountable. If you like systems that are not intrusive, then you ought to like the jury system. Because they don't make rules that apply to everybody. They hear a dispute between two parties and they resolve it. It doesn't intrude on anyone else's life. If you like private action, you ought to like the jury system because a fight, a lawsuit that ends with the jury is a dispute between private parties that can be resolved upon whatever terms they want at any time they want to resolve it without any government intervention. And if you like the Constitution, then read Amendment number 7. Because this got jury trial record.